Welcome everybody back to Lair Academy. It's Mickey again, and today we're going to be taking a look at sending emails through Laravel. We're just going to start off with the basics, and what I've done is I've created a blank Laravel project. If we take a look at it in Sublime, I have our env file up here, as well as our mail config, which you can find underneath config, and then mail.php. We'll take a look through this file, but most of the variables that you'll find in this file are actually included in your env file as well. Just mail underscore and then the variable name. Let's switch back to mail.php and start taking a look. Now by default, Laravel supports a number of different mail functions such as SMTP, mail, send mail, there's mailgun, mandrill, and then there's a whole bunch of other options here. By default, it's set up for SMTP, but we're going to be checking out the log feature. If we scroll down, you can see we have some options for the SMTP host address, such as port. We have a global from address. We're going to come back to this stuff later. We can set some encryptions, the username, password, and finally the path to send mail if it's set up in our server. Again, we'll come back to all these variables, but let's check out the log driver first. So what we're going to have to do is in env, we'll change the mail driver to log. So what this actually means is any emails that we send, they're not actually going to get sent out. They're going to go into the Laravel log file. This log file you can find underneath the storage folder, inside logs, and then laravel.php. However, we're just going to use our console to get started with this first part of the session. We will switch back over to write a controller later. Let's load up PHP Artisan Tinker. And the first command we're going to look at is mail raw. We will say mail raw, and then the next parameter is going to be a string which we want to send within the body of the email. So we'll just say hello there, followed by a callback function. This callback function will accept a message, and if we hit the curly brace here and enter, you can see PHP Artisan Tinker will just put us on the next line, allowing us to continue on. Here we will add the to, and I'll just say to mickey@lairacademy.co, and I'll also fill in my name. We could also say the message is from a certain user, so we'll say Lair Academy. And the neat thing, we can chain events together, so after we set the from, we can also set a subject. So we'll do this by just having a test raw email here subject. Now let's end our function, and we will end our raw command. And let's just go ahead and let's hit enter. And you should see the result will be null. And this is kind of our indication in PHP Artisan Tinker that the mail driver has worked successfully. So if we go to, let's actually tail the log file. Let's change this to 15. And if I hit enter underneath the Laravel log, what we'll get is the raw email here. You can see we have the subject, test raw email, we have our from address, our to, and finally we have the hello there. So our email has technically been successfully sent, however it's just gone to the log file. Now the next part I wanted to look at is creating a blade file and using that to send an email. Inside resources views, we have an emails folder. I've created one. And the next thing I'm going to do is create a new file, and I'll just call this file test.blade.php. And within this file, I'm just going to say hey there and pass in a name. Once again, we're just going to use our console to try and load this up. So let's switch over to our console and load up PHP Artisan. Now, this time we're going to use mail send, and mail send will allow us to pass in a blade file. So we'll say mail send, and let's pass in our emails.test. The next parameter we're going to pass in is the variables that we're going to use inside our email. In this case, we're going to use a name variable. So we'll have an array of name, and let's just assign it Mickey. Now, just like the raw, we're going to have to pass in a callback function. In this case, we will just use m instead of message. We'll have the from address, so we'll have support. We'll also put the to and the subject. Now, just like before, we'll end our function calls. We'll hit enter. You'll see that we have a null. Now let's check our log file once again. Now within our log file, you can see we have our subject, our from, our to, as well as the data from our view. You can see that the name has also been changed to the name we passed in this case it is Mickey. Now I want to take a second and go back to the mail.php config. As you can see, we're having to add the from email address in constantly. Now inside this mail.php we can assign a global from email, and this just makes it so we don't have to put in the address or the name in each one of our emails. So we'll supply an address, and if you want you can put in a name as well. I will add the name of Lara Academy Support, and we'll give this a save, and let's use PHP Artisan Tinker once again to test out this from email address. So we'll load it up, and the only thing that I'm going to do is remove the from function here, so we'll just have a to and a subject. We'll go ahead and send this, and let's check our log again. You can see that we automatically have the from email address in here, and everything is the same because we haven't changed anything else. Now it's finally time to load up a controller and see how we can do it in there. Inside HTTP controllers, I've already made a controller and I've just called it email controller. In here we have a send function and a route that will allow us to use this function. In here I'll just use mail send like we did in PHP Artisan, and I want to send the test blade file. So again, this has to be in emails.test. Next, I'm going to give it the variables that we want to use, and this will fill in later, and finally the function as well. And actually I'm going to change our data into an array, so I'll just say the array is going to be a key of user, and it's just going to accept the data of user. Inside our callback function, I will set our message to have a to and also a subject. And we need to grab the first user from our database in this case, so I'll just use first. And finally at the end, let's add something. Actually, let's return a word complete. Now there's a few errors in our code, and we'll go through each one of these. If we try and refresh, the first one is the mail class cannot be found. So we could just have a use statement at the top to import it. And we might as well import the app user as well. So we'll just say use app user and clean up our code a little bit. If we give this a save and try again, we'll see another error. Undefined variable name in our test.blade file. Well, let's actually go into our test file here. Let's change the name to email just so we can do a little more information here, because I don't believe I have name filled in our database. So we have the exact same error here. Let's see how we can fix this. Well, since we're working with Laravel, we know we're going to have an object of user, so we want to say user email. So let's give this a save, and let's see what the next error is, because that will fix that one. And undefined variable user. Now we're getting undefined variable user because PHP doesn't actually know which user object we want to use, so we have to include that in our function call. Once we hit a refresh, we should see the word complete here, and let's actually check our log to make sure that everything went in okay. So you can see here we have the basic content, and then we have hi there with an email address. So technically our mail has set up the log, and that's everything I want to show you in this quick video. Next we'll be taking a look at the few other options that we have, including API and SMTP. Thanks for watching.